I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight, Indigenous communities in Ontario reflect on the Pope's visit to Canada.
We need to hear, really, the things that they took away from us.
How crucial some say this expected apology is to healing the hopes, and why some say words alone aren't enough. Plus,
a lot of people are waiting 8 to 10 hours and they're very angry.
Emergency doctors sound the alarm over critical staffing shortages, what they say needs to change now.
People love Caribbean food because of the flavors, the spices that are used.
We'll take you to the Taste of the Caribbean underway this weekend in Little Jamaica.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Thanks for joining us. We'll have more on the Pope's historic visit in a moment, but first we're tracking a storm in the GTA and southern Ontario, including a confirmed tornado near Ajax. We have some video to show you from social media of the storm there. As you can see, powerful winds right now. More than 26,000 people are without power in Ontario. So we want to bring in Sophia right off the top here for you. I know you're very busy right now, but we've got one confirmed tornado and a warning for another tornado. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the same cell that may be reproducing a second tornado. Those torrential rains you saw earlier, still from this cell that we're going to be talking about. The latest numbers, though, from Ontario Hydro have exploded. 32,000 now without power. Really volatile storm environment for those of you, as you heard there, in southern Ontario and around the GTA. Let's go to this cell that I'm tracking on radar, rotation indicated on radar. It is that same cell that produced a tornado on the ground near the Maddock area. Lots of damage reports and pictures. It weakened, then has strengthened again. For those of you in the Gananoque region, Brockville and the Thousand Islands, now is not the time to be leaving the multitude of campgrounds and campsites, tents and trailers, and getting on the roadways. Now is the time to seek shelter immediately. This is a potentially life-threatening storm. It's been one of two major lines of storms that have pummeled everywhere. From Woodstock over to Cobourg was that other line of storms that came off the Huron shores. The potential of torrential rain and localized flooding there as well, with the very dry and not saturated ground. The storm risk continues into the overnight period, even without the extra trigger of daytime heating, and I'll keep live tracking it for you right here. Now is the time to seek shelter again if you do see any signs of this severe weather. Shannon.
Thanks, Sophia. We'll have more on the storm throughout the show, and we'll check back with you soon. To the other big story tonight, the Pope is in Canada. He's calling this visit a pilgrimage of penance. That's his arrival there, while Indigenous communities here in Ontario are watching closely with mixed feelings. We'll have more on the hopes and hesitations in a moment, but we start in Edmonton on the eve of the Pope's expected apology tomorrow. Olivia Stefanovic is there.
The arrival of Pope Francis closes a circle for Chief Willie Littlechild.
And that's the moment that I invited him directly to come to Canada.
Since 2008, the former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner made several personal appeals to the church for a residential school apology on Canadian soil, including one in the spring at the Vatican.
I looked right at him, right in his eyes, and I said, the survivors want to hear 3 words: I am sorry. And some people call it a jail. If you come with me closer.
Littlechild survived more than a decade at this former school. Now he will be the one to introduce Pope Francis at this first stop on his pilgrimage of penance.
I was so thankful that he chose Maskwacis, because that's where I spent 11 years of my life, and sometimes I couldn't go home.
And we got all the orange ones for Every Child Matters.
The Pope's imminent visit stirring up the past in this community.
It's all coming back, it's all surfacing again. I left it alone all these years. I don't know how to prepare for it because of the fear, the the emotion.
The next generation is using an app to learn the language that was ripped away from their families.
Because of residential school, That's why we don't really know our language.
They say the legacy severed them from their culture.
When the Pope comes, I want him to understand. So
I'm still angry, all of the teachings that they imposed and forced on my mom.
And it's because of her mom, Velma, that Carolyn Buffalo changed her mind about attending the papal visit.
Hopefully, the apology will give me some measure of closure.
Pope Francis is expected to apologize for residential schools on Monday, and the words he uses will be important. Many survivors are looking to the Pope to go further from what he said in Rome, acknowledging the role the church played in running the institutions, not just apologizing for the actions of some of its members. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Edmonton.
Well, the Pope is not making a stop in Ontario. His visit is being felt deeply by many Indigenous communities. Clara Pasica was at a powwow today where some were reflecting on the expected apology, the power of words, and also hope for meaningful action.
As thousands of Indigenous people gather in Ohsweken, Ontario for a powwow celebrating their culture, language, and art, the timing of the celebration coinciding with the Pope's visit is top of mind for many attendees. A visit that will take on a very different tone than the last, created to offer apologies to Indigenous people for the role of the Catholic Church in residential schools. Shirley Ida Eliza Williams-Pheasant attended St. Joseph's Residential School near Sudbury.
Because we were forbidden to speak the language, sometimes we would blur it out without thinking, We'd just say something and then they would scold us. It seems that they were looking for something like that to happen and then they would punish us.
At first, like many, she wasn't sure if she wanted to hear from the Pope, but now thinks further healing is possible.
If he's coming here to apologize and acknowledge that, then we're not really, we're not liars. We weren't liars. We never told stories. We were telling the truth. But nobody believed us.
She also wants to see money flow from the Vatican towards healing and language programs. But Gaza Gadwin Anishinaabe says nothing the Pope can say will be enough.
You can take our leadership there and get him to talk of these discussions, but there is nothing he can say to rescind what they have done to us. My family's been to residential school. I've been to day school. My kids are second generation, third generation, feeling the effects of what has been indoctrinated into us, this colonial mentality.
Bob Watts helped negotiate the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement and teaches reconciliation at Queen's University. He says he thinks an apology will matter as much to the future as it does to those who lived through it.
So I think we're in a really significant pivot point in terms of our journey as Indigenous people. And getting healing right and setting a path, clearing that path for our kids and our grandkids and all those future generations is pretty significant. And hopefully this is part of that.
Indigenous people here tell us there is room for the Pope to get it right now. And if he does, for the next part of the healing journey to begin, as they anticipate the apology they waited so many years to hear. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Ohsweken, Ontario.
A lot of this is hard to hear and hard to confront, and for anyone affected by residential schools and in need of support, there is a 24-hour line you can call. It is 1-866-925-4419. Tomorrow, CBC News will bring you History as It Happens. Adrian Arsenault will host a special on CBC News Network starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, working up to the Pope's expected apology. And on radio, we have you covered too. Neil Coxell and Matt Galloway will host a special. That starts at noon Eastern on CBC Radio 1 and CBC Listen. We now know the names of the two young men killed in a nightclub shooting in Vaughan. The club owners have posted a message on Instagram revealing the two men shot were working that night as security guards at the club. 22-year-old Tosin Amos Arrow Shegbe and 25-year-old man known as Easy were pronounced dead at the scene. A GoFundMe is now raising money to help with their funeral costs. Police say the investigation is ongoing. There's been no word yet on suspects. We'll bring you more on this story as we learn it. Meantime, a 17-year-old boy is facing one count of second-degree murder after a deadly stabbing earlier this month. It happened back on July 8th at this plaza parking lot near Dufferin and Finch Avenue West. Police say there had been a large party going on in a nearby lounge when a fight broke out just outside. The victim was identified as 18-year-old Optin Abe Dini Senobar. Police say he was stabbed at least once. A 37-year-old man is dead after a motorcycle crash in Scarborough earlier today. It happened at Brimley Road and Waterfield Drive just before 2 a.m. Police say a motorcyclist somehow smashed into a light pole. He was pronounced dead at scene. What caused him to crash his bike is still unknown. And an alert tonight from Toronto Public Health about a spike in suspected overdose calls so far this month, including 10 deaths in a span of just a few days. That's according to preliminary data from Toronto Paramedic Services. For the entire month so far, there's been a total of 21 suspected opioid overdose-related deaths. Health officials say there appears to be a connection to smoking drugs and that fentanyl continues to show up in the local drug supply in a variety of colors with unpredictable potency and contamination. The overdoses are happening in neighborhoods across Toronto. Health officials say try not to use alone if you must, have a safety plan, and vet your supply. We have been talking a lot lately about the critical staffing issues facing Ontario hospitals. Tonight, emergency room doctors are sounding the alarm. Meg Roberts has more on what they're saying needs to happen now.
The system's always been kind of on life support.
Some doctors are saying care at hospitals across the province is being compromised due to an insufficient amount of staff. Toronto Western Hospital sent a notice out to doctors and resident doctors Friday, asking them to pick up nursing shifts this weekend in order to keep the emergency department open. A Toronto ER doctor says he's never seen issues like the healthcare system is facing now.
It's the stress of COVID that's really tipped it over the edge. And now is the time for real fixes, I think.
They took care of me and they were amazing.
After spending the day in the ER at Toronto Western, this woman feels staff needs more appreciation.
Ridiculous. They need to allow people to be paid what they're worth and to work and to take care of people, because that's why they've chosen that profession.
Another Ontario doctor tweeting this out yesterday. He says multiple emergency departments in Toronto were on the verge of collapsing last night and is wondering why an official emergency has not been declared. It's one of many calls from healthcare professionals to the government.
The real care issues and the urgency has been lost in some of the politicking that goes on.
The Canadian Association of Emergency Physicians says the government needs to raise the priority level to fix the current system, even after months of pleas from healthcare officials.
I don't really know what kind of crisis we need to highlight this. We're already closing departments, shutting down areas of departments, losing staff. I don't know what else we need.
The emergency department here at Toronto Western Hospital was able to stay open over the weekend, but some health officials say it's unclear as to how long that could last. We've reached out to the provincial government for comment and are still waiting to hear back. Meg Roberts, CBC News.
Welcome back. Global Affairs Canada is confirming the death of a Canadian fighter in Ukraine as that country marks 5 months since the Russian invasion began. The 31-year-old from Montreal was killed fighting in the east. As Valeria Corey-Minocchio shows us, to his loved ones, why he went there was no secret.
Émile-Antoine Roy-Sirois' family is remembering him as sensitive, intelligent, and with strong convictions.
He saw children dying on the TV and all these people, all these civilians dying, and he wanted to do something. But it was not the first time that he had the intention to join the army.
Hua Sihua worked for a delivery company. He went to Ukraine with no formal military training. His sister Liliane and Aunt Martine say no one and nothing could have stopped him. She says we weren't going to be able to stop him because when he's committed to a cause, he has to see it through. Hua Sihua left Montreal at the end of March. He arrived in Poland first and transported medicine to Ukraine for 10 days. Then he joined the fighting.
I would have created the dam. And
that's where Hua Sihua got the nickname the Beaver.
Because you're the beaver? Because I'm the beaver.
He spent 3.5 months in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, which has seen heavy fighting. His family learned he died this past Monday from a friend and fellow volunteer fighter of Hua Sihua in the army. We all cried together for a long time, she says. Global Affairs Canada says it's aware of the death of a Canadian in Ukraine, but did not confirm Hua Sihua's identity. A spokesperson says officials are in contact with the family and are providing assistance, but isn't giving more information. She says she wants people to remember him for all his convictions and all he has given in his life. The family is now trying to repatriate Hua Sihua's body back to Quebec. Valeria Corey Minocchio, CBC News, Montreal.
To the U.S. next, where thousands of people have been forced to flee by a fast-moving wildfire in central California. It only broke out Friday, but it's already burned more than 5,500 hectares. At last report, it was about 20 kilometers from Yosemite National Park, but less than 1 kilometer from a town of about 1,400 people. Tinder dry conditions and extreme heat are fueling the flames. Little Jamaica in Toronto welcoming thousands this weekend for the Taste of the Caribbean, a chance to showcase favorite dishes from the islands and bring together a neighborhood hit hard by the pandemic and ongoing construction.
First time we're hosting Taste the Caribbean Food Festival on Eglinton Avenue West, and it features 28 different food vendors from the Caribbean. Our main goal is that people understand that there are many different Caribbean countries. The food is awesome from all of them. Everybody has something different to offer. So it's very important for us to explore, to try different ones. We know our staples, we know our jerk chicken, we know our roti, but there's so many other options. People love Caribbean food because of the flavors, the spices that are used. Some of our chefs talk about the marinating of the food. So, you know, marinating your meats for 4 or 5 days really makes the seasoning soak in. Just using the different flavors throughout the different cultural backgrounds. So our flavors are a mix of a multitude of cultures that we represent as well.
I usually like to blend infused foods. I'm an actual chef. I've cooked in and around Canada and the US the last 15 years. So with that, I bring my experience in the kitchen and my experience with cultures, and I kind of tell a story and kind of bring cultures together through food.
It's been a great day. We started off with the mayor coming here. She was excited seeing our popcorn, and from there it's just been taking off.
So today we have gourmet popcorn. All our popcorn is covered with chocolate. Our newest addition that we have, which we brought today, is pineapple coconut, raspberry s'mores, Crown Royale peach.
This is a community that's been suffering for ages. Gentrification, it looks like, construction out the wazoo, obscuring businesses so they're not getting any business coming in. And I feel like events like this on a consistent basis pulls people not only from around the community, but throughout the GTA and sometimes even in the US. So I think for me to be a part of that and try to help bring that business, more community, and everybody else in and around is something I'm doing to help this community stay intact and grow in the long run.
Within the past couple of minutes, all storm warnings for Toronto have now been cleared, but take a look. We are seeing some damage. Here's a look from Midtown where a large tree fell on some wires. Toronto police say the wires were not down, but they were sparking, so power has been out in that area. As you can see, city crews working hard to clean up that one. Let's bring Sophia back now. You've been tracking this for us this evening. Where are we at with the tornado warnings?
So tornado warnings have ended. So those of you in Brockville, Gananoque, Prince Edward County, and Kingston are out of the clear of a tornado warning, but still a severe thunderstorm warning is present above you there. You mentioned the power outages there, between 1,000 to 5,000 without power, that Midtown to North York stretch, and about 31,900 customers being reported by Ontario Hydro being without power, rather. Let's look back at that tornado warned cell. Confirmed tornado in Madoc, that's in the Tweed area. It weakened, strengthened again. I want to show you some more pictures and some scenes of the damage here. We actually have some damage pictures that have been reported as well. Tornado spotters on the ground saw that tornado as well. Again, it's moved off into Lake Ontario and off into the St. Lawrence, but for those of you along the Lake Ontario QEW 401 corridor stretch, still being pummeled by some pretty torrential rain. It was a secondary line of storms that formed off the Huron shores. We actually had the City of Toronto in 2 severe thunderstorm warnings this afternoon and this evening. Much different story as you head into Monday. That storm is heading off into the lake. The atmosphere, though, is still ripe for the potential of some storms into the overnight period. This has been after days and days, right, of the extreme heat and humidity that we've been talking about, really volatile storm environment, and all of these storms were bubbling up in front of a pretty potent cold front that will wring out the atmosphere now into the overnight period. We had lots of lightning and hail as well, up to Toonie size hail reported in some of these storms, and localized flooding as well, potentially on that 404 and DVP stretch. Northerly flow in place for Monday. Temperatures will feel like a totally different season. Will feel like 29 with no humidity. That continues for a really pleasant rest of your work week. Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Sophia, tracking it all for us tonight.
You're welcome.
And that's it for us. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Hope you have a good one.